to have also a representative country for the Andes region. And these countries represent about 3/4 of global energy demand by 2030. So they are representative for the total global situation. These countries account for around 58% of world population and 60% of global GDP. The countries, so we started our own analysis of the reference scenario and of the REmap options in these countries. And for each of these countries, we have prepared, or we're just completing, a country-specific write-up, which has a standardized structure. And this write-up plus a fairly complex spreadsheet that supports this write-up, that contains the analysis, is the basis for the discussion. We have approached the country focal points, and by now focal points for the REmap analysis and country experts have been identified in these countries, and either we have already shared these analysis with them, or we're going to share this analysis in the coming week or so. So in terms of structure, the analysis is one part, and the dialogue with the country experts is the other part. And in fact, we think that the dialogue is the core part of this exercise, because ultimately the goal is not just a report, but action based on that report. Because our country subset only covers 75% of global energy use, we decided to supplement that with regional analysis. So we're working on the analysis for Africa, EU, Latin America, Caribbean, South Asia, and Southeast Asia. And we're working there together with a number of institutes. Institute of Energy Economics in Japan, OLADE. We're talking with ADB, African Development Bank, and we hope to talk with World Bank soon. So we have shared the majority of these write-ups now with the countries, and as said, we hope to share the remainder very soon. And this dialogue can take different forms. In some cases, we have an email exchange. In other cases, it's a conference call, and in some cases also it takes shape of actual face-to-face meetings. We've had now a number of these meetings. For example, in Germany we've had 2, in Korea we've had 2, in Japan, in Turkey, Australia. We'll have another one next week. And you can see the list with also with planned meetings. So we're putting quite some effort into the dialogue and the outreach. This webinar is part of that. We've had a similar webinar about two weeks ago, and we hope to organize a number of more webinars in the remainder of the year. We have a very tight deadline. We aim for a complete draft roadmap document for management review by November 1st. So that leaves us 5 to 6 weeks. We're planning a workshop for which the focal points and the experts will be invited tentatively on 12 and 13 November, and that will take place in Abu Dhabi. So this week you will receive more information on that. And based on the feedback we received there, we will revise the document and then table a revised roadmap for discussion at the 6th Council, which takes place in December, 10 and 11 December. With the goal then to launch the roadmap at the Assembly, which takes place on 18 and 19 January. So indeed a very ambitious timeline, and we can only meet this timeline if we receive your inputs in the coming weeks. This REmap analysis of this aspirational doubling objective is not a target-setting exercise. What we want to explore is what would be the options that could be deployed to meet that target. So therefore we decided not to develop a REmap scenario, but instead focus on this set of REmap options. And these options are characterized by their potentials and by their cost. And these costs are relative cost. So it's the cost of the renewables option in comparison to the cost of the non-renewable technology that would be deployed in the reference scenario. Also, we're quantifying benefits, and in terms of benefits, we're looking at external effects, health effects, and greenhouse gas reductions, and we're looking, for example, at jobs created through these that could be created through these REmap options. And then, based on this set of REmap options, we can do a number of interesting analyses. We can look at the investment needs, we can look at the subsidy needs for renewables, we can look at international cooperation opportunities, we can look at the need for policy to actually deploy these technologies, and various other dimensions. Because we do the analysis on the option level, technology option level, we can also do interesting cross-sections and aggregations. First of all, we can add up the country results to get to a global perspective. But also we can look at what happens at the sectoral level, which is also very relevant for a number of decision makers. When we developed the methodology, we deliberately picked a relatively simple and accessible approach based on Excel spreadsheets instead of a more complex systems modeling approach. So we thought that accessibility was more important than perfection. So because of the approach we chose, we can share the analysis, the whole analysis with you, which allows then also further refinement and verification by your experts. Because we recognize that there are limits what you can do in a spreadsheet, we complement the spreadsheet analysis with more advanced systems models, especially for the power sector. That is important as we go to high shares of variable renewables. Now this graph shows you schematically how we have structured the analysis. So the center component is really this set of REmap options and their characterization. And so that characterization has two components. It has the cost component and it has the potential component. And so for the cost component, we look at the cost of the reference technology, we look at the cost of renewables today, and we look at the cost reductions between now and 2030 that we expect. Plus then we include these benefits which I just mentioned. On the potential side, we have done a fairly extensive analysis of renewable technology options that would be available by 2030. We have done a number of sectoral studies, notably for manufacturing industry and for cities, so the building sector. And we draw heavily on country studies for these 26 countries which I earlier mentioned. So we found that there is on the country level a number of very interesting documents that are also worth discussing in this international framework, and it can enrich the analysis. Now, so we end up with a set of perhaps 100 technologies around for 26 countries. So that is a total of 2,500 options, and it's a challenge on how to present that rich information in an aggregate way. And so one approach which we will show is what we call cost curves, and I'll show you an example in a minute. So this brings me to the second part of this webinar, the preliminary findings and messages. Oh, and I forgot to say in the beginning, if you have any comments or questions, you can type them in. We will collect them and we'll try to respond to them at the end of the webinar. So in terms of preliminary findings and messages, the reference scenario includes all policies in place or likely to be put in place in the coming years. And a first important observation there is that we found that some countries have very detailed scenarios and objectives for 2030, while that is not the case for others. So there is a very varying level of sophistication in the policy planning framework. Where such information was not available, we have tried to prepare such a reference scenario by our own. We have drawn for that on a number of studies, for example IEA work, but also other sources. These reference scenarios include a certain efficiency gain also. And we have kept that efficiency improvement rate constant for our assessment of renewables options. We have done an analysis of which options are being deployed in that reference scenario, but so far we have not looked into the cost of that reference scenario. We are currently, however, looking in the learning investment needs, which is kind of a measure for the cost of the reference scenario, but that's still ongoing. So the observations regarding the planning framework and suggestions for improvement will also be part of the analysis and the REmap report. Now, in terms of renewables share, so our measure is the share of renewables in total final energy consumption. And in 2010, that share was 16.7%, which included 8.7% modern renewables and 8% traditional biomass. So about half modern, half traditional biomass. Now, in the reference scenario, the total share of renewables is projected to grow to nearly 20%. And about 3/4 of that would be modern renewables, and 1/4 would be traditional biomass. So nearly a doubling of the share of modern renewables. Now, we've looked at additional potentials, and so far we have identified potentials that would bring the total share of renewables to nearly 30%. And out of these 30%, around 27.3% of that would be modern renewables. So with the REmap options included, the share of modern renewables would grow from 8.7% in 2010 to 27.3% in 2030. So that's more than a tripling. But with all these options considered, the share of renewables in 2030 is still less than 1/3 of total final energy consumption. Now, if you look at the geographical spread on where these additional REmap options are being deployed, then around 10 countries that are listed here account for about 2/3 of that additional renewable energy use. So these are the countries where a lot of the action needs to happen to actually put this into place, if this aspirational objective needs to be realized. So I mentioned that we use cost curves to try to aggregate that information and make it more accessible. And this graph is, let's say, a first simplified cost curve. What it shows is in green the development in the reference scenario, and then in blue the additional REmap options. So the dark green is the growth of the share of modern renewables in the reference scenario from 9 to 15%. And then in the blue curve shows the REmap options that take it from 15 to around 28%. So the x-axis is the share of renewables in total final energy consumption. The y-axis is the substitution cost. And you see that these substitution costs vary widely. So negative means there are important cost savings. So there are some options which are very cost effective, and that's up to around 22%, and beyond that there are still significant potentials, but they have slightly higher cost than the reference options. But if you look at the total cost of the whole portfolio from around 15% to around 28%, then that is nearly zero. So that is the total area under the curve, the negative cost area and the positive cost area. So the total annualized substitution cost in 2030 are around $57 billion per year, which of course sounds like a huge sum. But if you compare it with the total annualized cost that year, it's less than 1% of that. So a very positive perspective on the economics of such a transition. And we think that this is one of the key findings of the analysis, and we are currently having another close look at these numbers because we expect that a lot of discussion will focus on these numbers. Now here is the same cost curve again, but in blue, but we also added a second cost curve which includes the external effects related to health. So if you switch especially from coal use to renewables in applications such as power generation, but also, for example, if you switch from say petrol cars to electric vehicles in cities, there are important health benefits. And if you account for these health benefits, it moves the cost curve downward. So there are additional economic benefits. And in fact, while the weighted average substitution cost without external effects was positive, $1.4 per gigajoule, it turns negative if you consider health effects. It becomes minus $1.2 per gigajoule. So, which means that the total package represented by all these options has in fact economic benefits. And this so far only considers health. We have not even looked into greenhouse gas reductions. In fact, we have quantified these greenhouse gas reductions, and we find that they're significant, in the order of 6 gigatons per year in 2030. So another way of looking at these results is there is a significant renewable energy potential which has economic benefits, and on top of that which can also reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And we think that that is a very important message also in that discussion for around climate change. Now, as I said, you can do many things with these REmap options and with these cost curves. This is yet another way to look at the same cost curve. And what we've done here is we've broken it down by technology and by resource type. We've done that for the reference scenario. That's the horizontal area you see on the left, and we've done that for the REmap options. And what you can see here is, for example, that there's a lot of green in this curve. And green means that it's a biomass option. So biomass accounts for around 60% of the total potential in the REmap options. So that is really critical. Also, it shows the importance of the power sector, which accounts for around 40% of the total potential. But at the same time, it means that 60% of the potential is in the end-use sectors, so in transport, buildings, and industry. And we think that these end-use sectors at this moment do not yet deserve the attention they need, and more policies should be focused there. Now we have, what I showed you here today is cost curves on a global level, but of course we also have these results now on a country level. So we hope that that information can be a basis for an in-depth discussion, and at the same time it can inform national policy making. And here you see in more detail then what is happening with the growth of renewables in the reference scenario at the bottom. So in the reference scenario, the majority of the growth is related to power sector, while in the additional REmap options, the share of the power is somewhat less, but therefore the end-use sectors add more. Now, here is yet another way of looking at the results. So I hope through these graphs we give you a flavor of all the things we can do with these results. I think we will only scratch the surface, and there will be many interesting analysis following that publication in the coming year. But what this shows is a breakdown of the contribution by sector. So it's again the same cost curve, but broken down into the role of district heat, transport, buildings, industry, and power. And what it shows is that indeed, while the power sector accounts for 4.1% of the total contribution of the REmap options, and is therefore the largest individual sector, the total of the other sectors is larger. So it is important to consider not only power generation options, but also options in end-use sectors and options in district heat. So key insights are that globally up to 30% renewable energy is possible at approximately zero cost. In the reference scenario, there is a slight increase of the share of renewables from around 17% in 2010 to around 20% in 2030. And that would be around 3/4 of that would be modern renewables, and 1/4 still traditional biomass. The power sector plays a critical role, but it's not possible to achieve this aspirational objective only in the power sector. We also need to consider options in the end-use sector. Biomass plays a key role, and we're currently assessing in greater detail the latest information on biomass potentials and what needs to be done to actually put that into place. You may recall our publication on advanced biofuels. That was part of the cost analysis for the transport sector, which we launched in June. We also find that it's not only direct substitution of fossil with renewable energy, but you also need to think about it in a systems perspective, and especially a switch to from fossil fuels to electricity, which is called electrification, plays an important role, then in combination with renewable power generation. For a typical example are electric vehicles in the transport sector, and we are quite optimistic on that option. Now, we showed you a cost curve that takes us to 30% renewables. We think it is possible to raise the share of renewables further. To do so, we need to consider early retirement of standing capital stock, which we have excluded so far. Another strategy would be to increase the energy efficiency beyond what is assumed in the country reference scenarios. Or a third option would be more structural change. For example, more emphasis on public transportation as an alternative to road vehicles, individual road vehicles. So the third and final part of this webinar, the planned publication outline and outreach. We propose an outline that follows the 3 objectives as was agreed in the work program 2013, that is pathways, sectoral results and international cooperation. The part on pathways will include the discussion of the REmap options, the country and sectoral potentials, the cost curves and benefit analysis. And the sectoral results, we want to discuss the market outlook and technology priorities, the investment and subsidy needs, and international cooperation, the observations on the policy planning framework, the gaps and best practice in that policy planning framework, and then recommendations for the IRENA work program. In fact, we're already using some of these results as we define the work program at this moment. Recommendations for sustainable energy for all, because that's where the doubling objective originates, and suggestions for regional cooperation. Now, we're aiming for a roadmap which will be between 75 and 100 pages, and we think we have much more information that may be of interest, and therefore we're planning to make a lot of this information available online. We're currently discussing a web tool, how to do that best, and we will prepare a number of publications in the coming months. And some of the topics would be technology cost predictions, biomass supply cost curves, external effects, job effects, etc. If you have suggestions how to improve the outreach, that would be very welcome, and please let us know. Now, I mentioned at the beginning that we very much value the dialogue, and there is a large number of meetings planned for the coming weeks. We'll be in Indonesia and Bali next week, where there is an APEC meeting. That is then followed by a second workshop in Australia later that week. We will have a charrette in Washington somewhere between 15 and 18 October to discuss the US results. The discussion of the India results will take place 21 or 22nd October in Delhi. Discussion of the Asia results is planned at the Singapore International Energy Week, end of October, and we would be happy to organize further missions and contribute to already planned events if you find that useful. Now, the final activity I wanted to introduce is this workshop we're planning, a review workshop of the draft roadmap. We're aiming for 12 and 13 November in Abu Dhabi. And the goal is to discuss the findings, to discuss the key conclusions and policy implications, and the opportunities for international cooperation. And also that will then still be a good opportunity also to discuss what all of this implies for the activities, for the continuation of REmap in 2014 and 2015, which is part of the work program we're currently preparing. So we're certainly proposing to continue and expand this activity. So we will send you more details on this planned activity in the course of this week, and we hope you'll be able to join. Now, this concludes the webinar. As I presented this, we have received 2 questions. The first question is, we understand from your presentation that our engagement as countries with the REmap is very important and that you have a very tight deadline. Until when do you expect further input from us to complete the analysis and the write-ups? Well, we're aiming for a draft roadmap by November 1st. So that means that we would need your input in the coming 2 weeks or so. Of course, we can, to the extent possible, also consider inputs at a later stage, but the window to adjust the analysis is rapidly closing. A second question was, and I should also say that as part of the work program 1415, we are proposing to further refine these country analysis that we have conducted in the course of this year. So any input which we cannot consider in detail for the January REmap, we are happy to consider as we refine the analysis in 2014. Second question is, for country engagement and to be able to discuss your findings, a country or even a regional workshop could be very helpful for us. Does IRENA plan any workshops to increase dialogue in the next months? Well, as I showed you, we already have quite a list of workshops planned for October. We will do our best to accommodate additional requests. It would be very helpful that if there is interest in such events, that you send us, let us know, and then we'll try to program it for the next 2 months or so. And a final question. You mentioned the importance of energy efficiency improvements in order to meet the doubling objective. How will REmap address this methodology, and how do you deal with the interrelation of the 3 SE for all goals? Well, for the 3 SE for all goals are global access to modern energy, doubling of the energy efficiency improvements, and doubling of the share of renewables. So far in our REmap analysis, we have focused on the doubling of the renewables share, but as I showed you in the results, we already assumed a significant reduction of traditional biomass use. So if you included all the REmap options, there was only 2% traditional biomass left in 2030, from around 8% in 2010. So on the excess side, we already assumed that traditional biomass would, let's say, nearly disappear, and that at least some level of electricity access would be globally available. For energy efficiency, for the time being, we considered the efficiency improvements as they are defined by the countries in the reference scenarios. We will compare that with the SE for all objective, but for the time being, we think we will not have the opportunity to assess in more detail how that doubling of the energy efficiency improvement rate can be reached, and we are planning a first workshop with the Energy Efficiency Hub under Sustainable Energy for All, which is operated by UNEP Research Center in Copenhagen, and we hope to add also this energy efficiency analysis in the course of 2014. The final question: do you plan sharing some of the inputs of the analysis which could affect results like technology cost, biosupply cost, constraints or intermittent risk, renewable energies and electricity generation? Well, the details on the REmap options are included in that spreadsheet tool, and yes, we will share that spreadsheet tool with the country experts for their review. So that is part of the package we send out for feedback. So these were all questions we have received so far. If you have further thoughts or questions, please let us know. So for us, the dialogue, as I stressed, is really the core part of this exercise, and we hope to have more exchanges with you in the course of the coming weeks and months. So this concludes this webinar. Thank you very much for your attention, and have a nice day.